The last thing Soraya Merrick remembered was fire. Plasma had ripped through the air above Corvallis crater, slicing open the defensive perimeter her unit had bled weeks to hold. She recalled the hiss of her own blood boiling beneath fractured armor and the dying cries of the Carethian Shieldborn, her elite recon team. Pain-sharp white-hot consumed her abdomen, and the world dimmed into silence. She had accepted it, that she would die there nameless on some irradiated battlefield beneath the twin moons of a world long lost. So when she opened her eyes to soft, sterile light and the unmistakable scent of synthetic antiseptics, her first reaction was confusion. This wasn't the ascension path. No forest of ancestors, no ceremonial drums, just white ceilings and the low hum of environmental systems. Soraya jerked upright instinctively and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through her side, a deep internal wound, hastily treated, but far from healed. She gasped, gripping the sheet around her. A beige tunic hung loosely over her torso, stained dark where her blood had seeped through the thin fabric. Her green-tinged fingers brushed the small medallion on a chain around her neck. The symbol of her family of the Merrick line, still warm, still there. This wasn't Carethian medical tech. Too clean, too precise. The instruments on the counter, the sleek gray walls, the transparent display panels on the far end of the room, it was all Terran Federation design. Her breath caught. She was in enemy territory. Soraya's eyes scanned the space for a weapon. There was none. No plasma dagger, no scatter shield emitter, nothing but a pitcher of water and a tray of nutrient packs human standard issue. She swung her legs off the bed and nearly collapsed. Her balance faltered as pain flared again in her lower back and abdomen. Her left vernic, the sensory tendril extending from her neck, ached dully, bandaged, wounded. She reached up to confirm its integrity, still intact, but it meant someone had handled her, treated her, examined her. A noise snapped her attention to the arched entrance. A man stood there, tall, broad-shouldered, human. The scar along his jaw suggested military service. His dark hair was mussed as though he hadn't slept. His uniform, though half peeled from his body, bore insignia ex-Federation combat operator, black-red stripes muted beneath burn marks and ash. A utility belt hung loose at his hip, housing at least one firearm and a fusion blade. Soraya's muscles tensed. The human raised both hands slowly. "Don't panic. You're safe." "Where am I?" Her voice was a rasp. The Carethian dialect coated her tongue like rust. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped closer, slowly, deliberately. "You're on EOS 7 neutral zone, about 20 miles from the front. This facility's off-grid. I brought you here." She narrowed her eyes. "Why? Because if I hadn't, you'd be dead." Soraya blinked. It wasn't the words that stunned her, but the tone calm, not boastful. Measured, not hostile. "You're Terran military," she said accusingly. "Your kind slaughtered my people at the crater." "I was Terran military." He gestured at his uniform. "Operative Rhett Callan, formerly of the 12th Tactical Command. I resigned, unofficially." She scoffed, shifting slightly to steady herself against the bed. "What you grew a conscience." His lips quirked into a tight smile. "Eventually, took longer than it should have." Silence stretched between them. Soraya looked toward the window. Past the privacy shield, the skyline of Spirehold City gleamed tall structures of black glass and neon arteries, with skycraft weaving between the towers like insects. It was a Terran capital, no doubt filled with surveillance checkpoints and soldiers. "I should be dead," she muttered more to herself than him. "You came close," Rhett said. "Plasma tore through your flank. Missed your liver by a centimeter. Lucky if you believe in that kind of thing." Soraya didn't. Not anymore. "And the others?" she asked, not sure she wanted the answer. His expression darkened. "None made it out of the crater." The word struck her harder than the plasma bolt ever had. She turned away, biting her lip to choke down the rising heat behind her eyes. No tears. Not for him. Not in front of a Terran. "I'm sorry," Rhett said, his voice quieter. "Don't." Another silence. "You think this is some twisted way to gain my trust?" she asked bitterly. "Save me, patch me up, talk peace." "No," he said. "I'm telling you this because there's something bigger coming, and I can't stop it alone." Her eyes flicked back to him, wariness rising. What do you mean? Rhett moved to the console on the wall and tapped a few commands. A screen glowed to life. Have you ever heard of Project HFY? She shook her head slowly. He keyed up a holographic projection. A sleek satellite cylindrical with intricate armatures rotated slowly. Readouts scrolled beside it, genomic sequences, dispersal patterns, and payload deployment matrices. It's a biosatellite weapon, he explained grimly. Terran's Science Division claims it's a defensive measure. Truth is, it's tailored to Carethian biology. Once in orbit, it'll release a pathogen into the atmosphere of any world it targets. Every Carethian within range would be dead in days. Slow, painful, systemic failure. Soraya stared at the projection bile rising in her throat. That's genocide, she said. Yes, Rhett confirmed. And it's about to be tested on HFY Enclave, a refugee settlement. 10,000 of your people, mostly civilians. Her heart pounded. Why are you telling me this? Because I can't stop it alone. I have intel access codes and a few allies inside the Federation, but not enough. I need someone who knows how to get in and make it count. Your file says you were special recon trained in infiltration and xenotech sabotage. You've seen my file. He nodded. Had to pull your ID chip to keep the scanners from flagging you. That's how I know your name. Soraya Merrick, Shield-born lieutenant, demolitions expert. She bristled. You know everything about me and I know nothing about you. I was a killer, Rhett said simply. Now I'm trying to be something else. You can help me do that. And maybe we can stop this madness. She stared at him for a long moment. Logic screamed not to trust him. Her instincts echoed that scream. But the image of that satellite of her people dying invisible deaths under the illusion of peace refused to fade. Finally, she spoke. Show me proof. Rhett pulled a small data crystal from his belt and slid it into the console. Federation documents, lab reports, and military communiques appeared. Soraya moved closer, her eyes scanning the data. There it was. Genetic markers, tissue trials, deployment schedules. The pathogen was real and cruel. A targeted neurotoxin that caused prolonged paralysis before death. It wasn't just extermination, it was punishment. She stepped back, breath unsteady. They're monsters, she whispered. No, Rhett said. They're people who forgot how to be human. Soraya looked at him. If I help you, if we do this, what happens afterward? We leak the data, he said. Expose the operation. Spark an interstellar tribunal. Force change. Maybe even peace talks. Or we get caught and executed for treason. That too. She let the silence linger a moment longer. Then you'll need to rebandage my side. If I'm going to help you break into a black site, I can't be bleeding through my shirt. Rhett gave a small nod and moved to retrieve the medkit. His hands worked with practiced precision as he unwrapped the old dressing. She hissed in pain. You're stubborn, he muttered. Born that way. As he applied fresh sealant over the wound, their eyes met briefly. Something unspoken passed between them. Not trust, not yet, but something adjacent. A spark. Rest tonight, he said, standing. We start planning tomorrow. She settled back into the bed, this time voluntarily. The pain dulled to a simmer. Outside, Spire Hold shimmered like a city of glass blades. Inside, two enemies had started the faintest outline of something that might one day be called an alliance. Or perhaps something more. The morning light streaming through the reinforced window of Rhett's safe house had an odd quality, filtered cold, as if the city outside knew the fragility of the moment. Soraya Merrick sat upright, now wrapped in a gray synth-weave cloak, absorbing data Rhett had pulled from hidden drives embedded in the wall. The intel was disturbing, worse than she'd imagined. Not only was Project HFY scheduled for deployment within 12 days, but Rhett had also intercepted chatter, suggesting test pathogens were already being manufactured in low-orbit labs. This isn't just a prototype, Soraya muttered. They're already scaling up for multiple releases. Rhett nodded grimly as he paced the room, sipping reconstituted coffee. HFY Enclave is only the beginning. The real target is Kareth Prime. Once they prove the weapon's viability, nothing will stop full-scale atmospheric deployment. Soraya turned toward him. How do you know all this? I used to sit in those briefings, he replied. Back when I still thought the war was about protection, not domination. I saw the lies build layer by layer until even the most grotesque actions were justified with a shrug and the word security. She tilted her head slightly, observing him. There's guilt in your voice. There's blood on my hands, he corrected, and I'm trying to make sure it means something. Soraya stood carefully, her side still tender. She adjusted her posture, straightening out of old habit. I need to contact my network, she said. They'll want to verify I'm not compromised. That this isn't some elaborate ploy, I figured, Rhett said. He moved to a secure drawer beneath the console and pulled out a comms device, palm-sized, shielded with quantum encryption. One of the last ones that hasn't been traced by Federation counterintel. She took it and entered her encryption keys. The device pinged with a soft blue glow. Sending a pulse, she muttered. Coded handshake to Cell 9 Sigma. They'll respond if anyone's left, Soraya replied quietly. Moments later, the device vibrated in her hand. A single line of text appeared. Secure Meat Point Sector Duskfall. 2300 hours. Come alone. Rhett frowned when she read it aloud. Duskfall. That's deep in the exclusion zones. Heavy surveillance and patrols. They want to test me, Soraya said. I expected it. I'm coming with you, they said alone. And I say I'm not letting you walk into a trap. You might be tough, Merrick, but you're still healing. If they see me, I'll hang back. Shadow support. She studied him for a moment, then nodded once. Fine, but you stay silent unless things go wrong. A corner of his mouth tugged up. Understood, Lieutenant. They moved through Spirehold's Undercity at dusk. Gone were the gleaming towers and flying convoys above. Down here, the streets were narrow and rust-choked, patrolled by drones with retinal scanners and armed interceptors in black armor. Trash fires burned in alleys. Refugees of every species shuffled through shadows. Federation broadcasts echoed off metal walls proclaiming unity and progress, while surveillance cameras blinked from every angle. Soraya walked with her hood drawn low and her cloak covering the slight bulge of armor beneath. Rhett stayed 2 blocks behind, his body posture, transformed, less soldier, more drifter. In this part of town, invisibility came not from tech, but from demeanor. They reached the meet point at 2258, a decaying structure once a transport hub, now served as a hollowed-out relic. Soraya slipped inside. The door sealed behind her with a mechanical sigh. A figure emerged from the shadows draped in dark armor, etched with resistance glyphs. Soraya, the woman, said, her voice low and dangerous. We thought you were dead. Soraya pulled down her hood. Close enough. The woman stepped closer. Pale markings on her face confirmed her identity. Commander Niven, Cell 9 Sigma. Soraya gave a nod. I came with information. From a source I trust. A Terran Niven's tone was sharp. Your pulse signature was traced back to a Federation grid. Explain. He's not Federation anymore, Soraya said. His name is Rhett Callan, ex-operator. He defected after uncovering Project Ashfall. Niven's expression soured. You believe him? I saw the files with my own eyes. Genome-tailored bioweapons. They're planning a test release on Chevry Enclave. There was a pause. Niven's fingers twitched near her sidearm. We've heard whispers, she said finally, but no solid proof. If you've got it, I do, and he's got more, including access routes to the black site where the prototype is being held. Niven eyed her warily. Then we need to see him. Now! Soraya tapped her comm. Rhett, show yourself. Rhett appeared from a side corridor within 30 seconds, his hands up, his eyes scanning. Niven's squad emerged from hidden vantage points, instantly weapons drawn and aimed. Easy, Soraya said. He's not our enemy. You don't get to decide that one of the soldiers snapped. Niven raised a hand to silence them. Let's hear him. Rhett stepped forward, slowly reaching into his coat. Several rifles cocked in response. He froze, just pulling the chip. With slow, deliberate movements, he retrieved a small black crystal from his pocket and placed it on the table between them. This contains everything. Deployment plans, biochemical data, and evidence that Ashfall is operational and ready to deploy. Niven inserted it into a portable interface. Her visor lit up as she scanned the files. Her expression shifted from skepticism to horror. This is real. I didn't come here to make friends, Rhett said. I came to stop a massacre. But I need your help. Niven looked to Soraya, then to her team. Finally, she nodded. There's a reason we haven't struck that site already. The security is top tier, genomic locks, internal sentry drones, AI pattern recognition. We have an in, Soraya said. The weekly supply delivery. Personnel switchovers. Rhett knows the protocols. I know how to move through vents, drains, and ducts without tripping biofields. Niven pursed her lips. We've been working on a sabotage op targeting their satellite uplink. This takes priority now. She turned to her lieutenant. Reroute our assets, begin coordination with the underground, and tell Vishar we're enacting contingency protocol Theta. Soraya stiffened. You're bringing in Vishar. Not my first choice, Niven admitted, but his infiltration network runs deepest. If there's a way in, he'll find it. Rhett looked between them. And what about after? Even if we destroy the prototype, what's to stop them from building a dozen more? Niven gave a grim smile. We make sure they never want to. We go public. Burn them with truth, just like they burned everything else. By the time they returned to the safe house, it was past Aero 200. Soraya moved slower, now her wound flaring again. Rhett helped her to the edge of the cot, his touch gentle but confident. I've seen you move through a collapsing corridor with a broken leg, he said. You should have asked me to slow down. I'm fine, she said automatically. He crouched beside her, checking her bandage. You don't always have to be the soldier, he said. She didn't answer. Not right away. Instead, her eyes drifted to the window again, the city beyond, still glowing with artificial starlight. They won't stop, she whispered. Even if we win this, people like the ones behind Ashfall, they don't vanish overnight. No, he agreed. But they can bleed. They can fall. And if they do, maybe someone better rises in their place. She looked down at him. Why do you care so much about my people? About this fight? Rhett hesitated. Then he said quietly, My sister married a Carathian. She was stationed as a cultural attaché on Viret colony before it was razed. The official report said she died in a fire caused by separatists, and the truth, she was executed, alongside hundreds of others. Federation Black Ops made it look like an accident. Collateral, that's the word they used. Soraya said nothing. Instead, she reached for his hand and squeezed it once. A moment passed, fragile, real. Then she let go and stood. We plan tomorrow, she said, and we prepare. Because the people behind Ashfall don't make mistakes, and they don't leave witnesses. Rhett gave a solemn nod. We'll just have to make sure they remember us. The next morning arrived with the stillness of anticipation. Soraya Merrick sat cross-legged in front of the glowing wall terminal inside Rhett's safe house, her eyes scanning a blueprint schematic of Facility Aegis 9, the black site where Project Ashfall's prototype was stored. Every corridor access point and biometric checkpoint was labeled in Terran military code. Soraya had memorized 3 floors already. Security layout changes every 72 hours, Rhett said, leaning over her shoulder. But the basement level, the containment chamber for the satellite that remains static. It's too complex to rewire frequently. Any access from the sublevels, he shook his head. Maintenance shafts are laced with sensor webs and toxin detection systems. If we trip one, the whole floor floods with paralytic gas. Soraya didn't flinch. So we go in from above. Exactly, he replied. We piggyback on a scheduled supply run. Maintenance crew gets scanned, but not as rigorously as upper-tier personnel. It's our best entry point. Behind them, the room buzzed softly with activity. Niven's team had set up a temporary ops station, complete with surveillance scramblers and encrypted comlinks. In the far corner, a man with pale blue skin and eyes like cracked obsidian hunched over a datapad fingers, flicking rapidly across its surface. That's Veshur, Soraya asked under her breath. Rhett nodded. Ex-consortium infiltration specialist. Rumor says he once erased an entire research colony's existence overnight. Not even a data trace left behind. She watched him work, noting the precision and elegance of his movements. He's building us a ghost route, Rhett explained. Synthetic identity profiles for you, me, and 2 operatives from Cell 9 Sigma. Credentials to get past initial checkpoints. Soraya folded her arms. What about deeper access? That lab requires clearance level Theta 5 or higher. Even you didn't have that when you were active. I know someone who does, Rhett said, and I'm meeting him tonight. Later that night, Rhett stood in the shadows of a derelict monorail station at the edge of Spirehold's industrial sector. The lights flickered overhead. The air stank of coolant leaks and burnt metal. He paced, checking his chronometer again. A figure stepped out from the far end of the platform. Older, broad-shouldered, wearing a long civilian coat but walking like a man trained in battlefield geometry. Grayson Rett said. "Didn't expect you to come. Didn't expect you to crawl out of the Federation's good graces either," Grayson replied. "You've made quite the mess, Callan. I need your clearance code." Grayson laughed once, sharp and hollow. "Straight to business. You haven't changed." Rhett's jaw clenched. "Please." Grayson stared at him for a moment, then reached into his coat and produced a black capsule. "This code, Theta 5, will give you short-term access to the inner lab. But the moment you use it, every Black Site commander will be alerted." "Understood. I also need to know why." Grayson's voice dropped. "Why are you really doing this?" Rhett looked at him squarely. "Because I saw the report. Ashfall isn't just about strategic deterrence. It's genocide. I won't be part of it." "And the alien girl?" Grayson asked. "You trust her?" "I do." "Then God's help you because you've chosen the harder path." Rhett took the capsule and slipped it into his pocket. "I already know that." Back at the safe house, Soraya and Niven studied newly received surveillance data from inside Aegis 9. One of their inside contacts, a cleaning technician, had managed to sneak out blurry footage of the prototype's stasis cradle. The weapon gleamed like a silver scythe, its core pulsating faintly with an ominous blue glow. "What's the weapon's actual delivery method?" Soraya asked. "Nanite dispersal," Niven replied. "Infuses the air with engineered particles. They bind to the Corethian DNA sequence, cross the blood-brain barrier, and trigger neurological degradation. Starts with tremors, ends in full nervous collapse." Soraya clenched her fists. "Who designs these things?" Niven answered without looking up. "People who've never had to watch a child die from it." Rhett entered the room, tossing the Theta 5 capsule on the table. "We have our key." Soraya looked at him. "From who?" old friend Rhett replied. "Still inside the system. For now." She didn't ask more. Some ghosts were better left buried. "Then we're ready," Niven said. "We go in 3 days. Vishar's team will intercept the supply drop and swap crates. You, Callan, me, and Operative Layan will pose as tech engineers performing a security calibration." Soraya nodded. "And our exit, we have contingency points on levels 3 and 5, vent access drone tunnels, and a fallback emergency elevator that Vishar believes he can override for 20 seconds. 20 seconds, Rhett raised a brow. Niven smirked. "Try not to trip any alarms." That night, Soraya couldn't sleep. The ceiling above her glowed with soft yellow light, dimmed for rest. Yet her mind spun with endless calculations. Routes, fallback plans, crossfire angles. More than anything, she kept imagining Shavri Enclave, the families there, the children, and her own squad buried beneath the cratered fields of Korvalan. She sat up, walking toward the observation port. Spirehold was quiet now. From this angle, the city looked almost peaceful. Rhett's voice surprised her. "Can't sleep." She shook her head. "My thoughts don't let me." He stepped beside her, silent for a while. "You used to be a ghost," she said softly. "The kind of soldier my people whispered about. The one who left no survivors." "I was," he admitted. "Why the change?" Rhett exhaled. "There was a mission on Veltrinov. Intel said it was a weapons cache. We hit it hard. No resistance, just a settlement full of farmers. We killed 47 people in less than 10 minutes. I pulled a child out from under rubble. Broken legs. Didn't speak a word. Just looked at me." He paused. "I realized that I had become exactly what the propaganda claimed you were." Soraya turned toward him. "So this is your redemption?" He didn't flinch. "No, this is my responsibility." She studied him a moment, then nodded. "I don't trust easily," she said, "but I trust you." Something passed between them, then a kind of silence, not born of awkwardness, but of understanding. Rhett spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "We might not come back from this, I know, and yet we go," she smirked. "There's no glory in survival, only meaning." Rhett smiled faintly. "Your people have a strange way with words." "Yours talk too much," she shot back. They stood side by side in silence, not touching but close. The war outside raged on. But inside that quiet moment, something shifted. Something softened. A fracture in the wall between enemies. and perhaps, just perhaps, the beginning of something far stronger. The day of the operation arrived like a storm on the horizon, quiet, but charged with tension. Inside the underground staging bay beneath Spirehold's transit sector, Soraya adjusted the synthetic badge on her uniform. The Terran Federation engineering jumpsuit, it was sewn into scratched against her skin, every fiber a reminder of where she was about to walk the lion's den. Across the room, Rhett Callan was already geared up, looking too comfortable in a uniform he had once worn for the wrong reasons. But today his red-accented armor was hidden beneath gray civilian fabric. The only sign of who he used to be was the way he moved, efficient, calculated, deliberate. "Tell me again how we're not walking into a death trap," Soraya muttered, fitting a small sensor disruptor under her collar. "Because death traps don't have blueprints, backup plans, or back doors," Rhett replied. "Just trust the math." That's not reassuring. Beside them, Leon, a younger Verdani agent with silver face tattoos and a perpetual scowl, slid a compact plasma cutter into his sleeve. "Don't worry," he said. "If we die, at least it'll be fast." "Optimism," Soraya muttered. "How refreshing." Across the room, Niven was finishing final checks on their Forge access profiles. Her hardened demeanor had only intensified over the past 24 hours. She had the look of someone who knew how many lives depended on what they were about to do and didn't care about comfort, only results. "All right," she said. "We have a 12-minute window. Supply vehicle will enter Aegis 9's secondary loading bay at 0410. We're riding in." Vashar approached with a small transparent case. Inside it were 4 wristbands, biometric masking bracelets, laced with nanoskin and dampening fields. "They'll fool facial scanners and short-range biometrics," he said. "But only for 6 hours. After that, you're just 4 rebels with nice boots." Soraya took hers and slipped it on. The moment it locked in place, her HUD dimmed as the device synced with the fake identity profile. The mirror nearby showed a subtly different version of herself. Skin tone slightly desaturated, eye color, altered facial structure, mapped to match a dead technician named Jara Ellen. She barely recognized herself. Rhett caught her glance. "Looks good on you. Shut up." At 0407, the team climbed into the back of a supply hauler loaded with replacement coolant coils and atmospheric regulators. It reeked of lubricant and cold steel. The automated pilot kicked on, engaging with Aegis 9's entry queue. "Keep still," Leon whispered. Movement scanners in the walls. The interior lights flickered as the vehicle passed through the outer gate. First checkpoint, biometric sweep. A soft pulse passed through their bodies like static. Green light. Next was the cargo scan, infrared and density mapping. Vasher's falsified load manifest scrolled across the comms channel, matching the crates perfectly. Green light. The third checkpoint, the most dangerous, was the personnel registry match. If the bracelets failed to mask their genetic signatures, the hum of the scanner increased. Soraya's heart thudded against her ribs. Then green light. The truck rolled forward into the internal docking bay. "Showtime," Niven said, unsealing the rear hatch. They stepped out into the facility. Aegis 9 was colder than Soraya expected, not in temperature, but in feel. Everything was gray on gray, sterile and silent, except for the soft hum of automated systems and distant mechanical footsteps. Cameras lined the corners, each one panning at calculated intervals. Rhett led the way, his posture relaxed, his badge visible. "Routine systems calibration," he said casually to a passing logistics officer. The officer nodded, barely looking at them. As they moved through the corridor toward lab subsection, Theta Soraya whispered through her comms, "We're ghosts for now. But if someone bumps into us the wrong way, they'll see we're not wearing Federation standard implants," Rhett finished. "I know." They reached the third checkpoint, which required retinal and voice clearance. This was the moment. Rhett stepped forward and placed his palm on the scanner, then leaned in toward the mic. "Commander Rhett Callan. Override authorization, Echo 77 Theta." The system paused. Soraya's hand crept toward her concealed sidearm. The scanner beeped, "Access granted." "Welcome, Commander," the AI said in its neutral voice. The door hissed open. Inside was the heart of the horror. The Project Ashfall prototype sat cradled within a field of electromagnetic barriers. It resembled a satellite, yes, but also a weaponized sculpture. Sleek fins folded around a glowing core humming with energy. The containment chamber was lined with monitoring systems, cooling conduits, and programmable data hubs. This is it, Leyen whispered. Gods, it's real. Niven moved immediately toward the data terminal. Cal and Soraya plant the charges. I'll extract the source code and deployment schedule. Leyen, secure the perimeter. Soraya reached into her pack and pulled out the mini-charge array's 6 slimline detonators laced with anti-tamper encryption. As she moved toward the base of the satellite, Rhett joined her. Place them in a triangular sequence, he said. Focus on stress points in the core. I know, she muttered. I'm not new at this. He smiled faintly. Just helping. Suddenly, alarms blared. Red lights bathed the room. Motion sensors in Corridor 5, Leyen shouted. We've got incoming. Soraya snapped to attention. How someone must have noticed the clearance profile. Callan's identity is flagged as inactive, Niven shouted back. Containment breach in 90 seconds, the AI warned. Security lockdown in progress. We need the download, Niven barked. 2 more minutes, Rhett replied, eyes locked on the data terminal. Soraya planted the last charge, then pivoted to the far end of the chamber, where the exit tunnel was already sealing. We're boxed in, she growled. Suggestions. Leyen fired a shot at the mechanical lock. Nothing. The door shimmered with kinetic shielding. Rhett's voice cut in. Plan B. We override the sub-level hatch in storage node 7. Soraya turned. That's down 2 levels. We'll have to fight our way through. Niven yanked the data chip from the terminal, stuffed it into her suit, and drew a pulse rifle. Then we better move fast. The firefight began the moment they left the lab. Security drones flooded the corridor bipedal units with auto turrets. Leyen took point-firing short bursts to stagger them, while Rhett hacked a side terminal to reroute access. Left corridor, down the stairs, then double doors marked ORS 7B, he shouted. Soraya ducked beneath a stun bolt and flung a charge behind them. The explosion rocked the hallway, knocking out lights and scrambling sensors. By the time they reached storage node 7, their time was almost gone. Seals locked, Rhett said, slamming his fist into the override panel. Buying us 15 seconds. He punched in a string of characters. Access override accepted. The hatch opened to a vertical shaft, a maintenance crawl space leading to the transport levels. Go, Niven shouted. Leyen slid down the ladder first, then Niven. Soraya was next, but she hesitated. Rhett looked at her. Don't wait. I'm not leaving you behind, she said. He grabbed her shoulder. I'll be right behind you. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, something passed between them again. Then Soraya dropped into the shaft. Rhett followed, sealing the hatch, just as the corridor behind them filled with more drones. At the transport level, their exfiltration team, Vesher and 2 others, were already engaged in a gunfight near a waiting hovercraft. Where the hell have you been? Vesher shouted, firing a round. Long story, Rhett replied, hauling himself aboard. Soraya threw herself into the co-pilot's seat. Go! The hovercraft lifted off, dodging plasma fire as it surged into the service tunnels that fed out into Spirehold's underbelly. Inside the vehicle, Niven clutched the data chip like it was sacred. Leyen panted, adrenaline crashing. Rhett leaned against the wall, chest heaving. Soraya turned to him, her voice low but firm. You okay? He nodded. Told you I'd follow. Outside, the city didn't yet know what had happened, but something irreversible had begun. The prototype was rigged. The data had been stolen. The truth was coming, and with it, fire. Facility Aegis 9 exploded at 0632 Galactic Standard Time. From a surveillance satellite high above Spirehold's industrial grid, it looked like a ripple of blue fire blooming outward before collapsing into a column of synthetic smoke. The central lab core, where the Project Ashfall prototype had been stored, was vaporized along with its power conduit and most of its internal security AI. In its wake, chaos, confusion, and an emergency lockdown across all Federation installations within the region. But for Soraya Merrick, it felt like breathing for the first time in weeks. She stood in the shadow of an abandoned warehouse in District Vale, half her armor stripped off and sweat glistening down her back. Her fingers still trembled slightly from the adrenaline of the escape, and a bruise bloomed across her left shoulder where a drone had clipped her on the way out. Across from her, Rhett, Callan, and Niven crouched near a comms array, uploading the stolen data. Tell me this works, Soraya said. It's working, Rhett replied, not looking up. We're pushing the contents to our triple redundant relay stations, Vishar's network resistance cells across 3 systems, and most importantly, the Galactic Free Beacon. The beacon, she raised an eyebrow. Isn't that just a conspiracy rag with bad encryption? They've gotten better, he said. And more importantly, they're unaligned. Their platform can't be legally shut down from within the Federation core sectors. Niven pulled off her gloves, her hands red and raw. We're taking a risk broadcasting this. The moment it goes out, we'll lose our shadows. No more hiding. Rhett nodded. Then we stop hiding. The data transfer beeped. Transmission successful. It's done, he said. A heavy silence fell over the group. Soraya broke it first. Now what? We wait, Niven said. Wait for the blowback, for the headlines, for the military to scramble and lie, but also for allies to reach out, because they will. There are still good people in this galaxy. They just need proof. 12 hours later, that proof arrived with the force of a tidal wave. The Galactic Free Beacon published a headline that detonated across every comm channel in neutral space. Leaked Federation weapon designed for racial eradication, targeting Corinthians. The article was accompanied by videos, decrypted memos, technical blueprints, and worst of all, test results. Medical logs of Federation scientists detailing the pathogen's effects on captured Corinthian civilians. Slow degradation of the nervous system. Death within days. The story went viral in under 3 minutes. Within hours, sectors once neutral began freezing cooperation with Federation trade envoys. Protests erupted in Terran colonies. High-ranking officials issued statements of concern. Independent governors demanded investigations. And somewhere far from Spirehold, a comlink lit up in a secured room. We have a response, Vishar announced the next morning, holding up a secure datapad. Multiple responses. The safe house now bustled with movement. Extra agents from Niven's cell had arrived. Everyone was on high alert. Soraya sat beside Rhett watching the screen. The messages came from across the galaxy. A diplomatic envoy from the Ashari worlds offering a platform for testimony. A Terran naval officer retired who had proof of similar projects from years ago. A coded message from within the Federation Council's Intelligence Bureau. We are listening. Proceed with caution. Soraya exhaled. It's working, maybe Rhett said. But it's not over. Niven approached her, expression dark, because someone else just responded. She tapped the screen again. A static, heavy message played. A voice, male, cold, commanding. To those responsible for the breach at Aegis 9, this is Director Vile Arkin, Executive Authority for Homeland Contingency. You have been identified. This is your only warning. Surrender and you may yet serve a purpose. Refuse and you'll be hunted. Every breath you draw after today will be stolen. We do not forgive betrayal. Soraya's blood ran cold. She turned to Rhett. Arkin, I thought Vega was the architect of Ashfall. He was, Rhett replied, his voice low. But Arkin was the planner, the strategist behind Black Site operations. I met him once. He's not just ruthless, he's religious about control. And now he knows we're alive. Niven didn't flinch. Good, let them fear us. That night, Soraya stood outside the safe house on a metal balcony, staring at the polluted city skyline. Her body still ached, but her mind was elsewhere, on the faces of the children at Chavri Enclave now spared. On the friends lost at Korvalan. On Rhett. She heard his footsteps before he spoke. You okay? She didn't answer immediately. I never thought I'd see the day when a human helped me dismantle one of your people's weapons. He leaned beside her on the railing. And I never thought I'd fall for someone I was trained to kill. That caught her off guard. She looked at him. I've been thinking about that, she said. About us. Rhett didn't speak. He waited. This isn't just about survival anymore, she said. It's about building something different, something better. And I don't know if there's room for people like us in that future. There has to be, he said. We're the ones who proved it's possible. She studied his face, lined with exhaustion, resolve, and something softer. Do you regret it? She asked. Saving me. He turned toward her fully. Not for a second. She stepped closer, heart pounding, then rested her forehead gently against his. No kiss. Not yet. But something far more important. Trust. The next day, the safe house went dark. Federation enforcers had begun sweeping the outer districts. Civilian curfews, random bioscans, roadblocks. This isn't reactionary, Niven said as she watched surveillance footage. It's tactical, controlled pressure to smoke us out. Rhett moved to the map of the city on the wall. We can't stay here. Soraya crossed her arms. Then we move. Again, where Leon asked. They've sealed everything outside Sector Verge. Not everything, Vesher said, stepping forward with a grin. I've been keeping a secret of my own. He tapped a control on his wrist, and a section of the floor hissed open. Beneath it was a hidden elevator shaft, old and dusty, but still powered. Where does it lead? Soraya asked. To the Rift Line tunnels, pre-war infrastructure that predates the Federation's expansion. Old train lines, cargo systems, abandoned facilities. No surveillance. Niven raised a brow. How do you know it still works? Because I lived down there for 2 years, Vesher said. It's how I survived the cleansing of Sector 12. Silence. Then Soraya nodded. We go. Rhett looked at her. This is where things get harder. She smirked. You say that like it's new. Hours later, they descended into the tunnels, leaving behind the safe house and the lives they had carefully constructed above. The elevator shuddered and groaned but held. As they stepped into the dim underworld surrounded by old rusted signs and ancient support beams, Soraya felt something shift again. Not fear, not exhaustion, but resolve. They were no longer just rebels or fugitives. They were the thread pulling apart a machine built on lies. And it would unravel, one secret at a time. The Rift Line tunnels were colder than Soraya expected, both physically and emotionally. They stretched like veins beneath the bones of Spirehold, ancient remnants of a transportation network lost to history. The Federation had paved over most of the pre-Union infrastructure, but here the system still throbbed, with old power emergency lights flickering every few meters, gravity stabilizers whining in protest. It felt like walking through the discarded organs of a forgotten world. Soraya Merrick led the group in silence, her hand resting loosely near the compact blaster on her hip. The rest followed close behind Rhett, Niven, Leon, and Vesher, their breath visible in the chill of the unregulated air. How far to the next junction? Niven asked. Vesher consulted a worn data slate he had partially restored. 2 more kilometers. Junction E71. From there we can route to the signal spire, an old communications uplink beneath Sector Crest. Rhett looked up at the rusted pipe ceiling. Is that where we're sending the final broadcast? Soraya nodded. Not just data this time. Voice. Faces. We show the galaxy what the Federation buried. Vesher's voice dropped. And we name names. By the time they reached the junction, several of them were limping. Leon's leg had seized from an old injury, and Rhett had scraped his shoulder when a section of walkway collapsed. The chamber was massive, once a transit hub for cross-sector mag rails. Now it was a cathedral of dust and steel. Looks abandoned, Rhett muttered. Vishar scanned the room. Mostly. The sensors detected faint biosignatures near the far wall. Soraya raised her weapon. From the shadows, 3 figures emerged. Hold, a voice barked. Male, low authoritative. Identify yourselves. Niven stepped forward without hesitation. Commander Niven Cell 9 Sigma. One of the figures lowered his weapon slightly. Code Blackwind Delta 4, she said. The man nodded once, then turned to the others. They're ours. They were part of a hidden Verdani splinter cell survivors of a Federation purge that had wiped out most of Sector 12. They had lived underground for nearly 4 years. Their leader, Talek Rowe, a grizzled former resistance general, welcomed the team with cautious pragmatism. You're the ones who destroyed Aegis 9, he said as they gathered around the dim light of a fusion core. We've heard the ripples. They're not ripples, Rhett said. They're waves. We have more. Talek narrowed his eyes. More what evidence? Testimonies? Names? We've gathered enough to trigger a formal investigation by the Galactic Peace Council if we can get the broadcast out. Talek looked skeptical. You think a message will stop the Federation? They'll bury you before the words leave your throat, maybe, Soraya said. But maybe they won't be able to. We're not alone anymore. That night, around makeshift fires and battery heaters, Soraya found herself sitting beside Rhett again. She was inspecting a scar on her arm, one she barely remembered earning. Rhett noticed her silence. You ever think about what comes after this? He asked. She didn't answer right away. Then, you mean assuming we're not disintegrated or executed? Yeah. Soraya let out a breath. I think about rebuilding, about a home that doesn't smell like fire and blood. But I don't know what it looks like. I do, he said. I see you there. She turned to him, caught off guard by the sincerity in his voice. You don't even know what I'd be without a rifle in my hands. I know what you are with it, and it's not just a weapon. Their eyes locked. The noise of the camp faded. It was Rhett who leaned in first, gently, slowly, and it was Soraya who met him halfway. The kiss wasn't soft or perfect. It tasted of ash and exhaustion, but also possibility. They pulled apart, neither needing to speak. For the first time, Soraya felt something fragile and bright flickering behind her armor. The next day, Talik's cell helped them access the signal spire, an ancient uplink tower that once transmitted data across entire star systems. Its interface was cracked and partially corrupted, but Vishar worked tirelessly to restore it. Niven prepared the message. Rhett wrote the framework. Soraya would be the voice, the face of the rebellion. Ready, Rhett asked as she stood before the camera drone. She nodded even as nerves tightened her chest. Start recording. The red light blinked on. My name is Soraya Merrick, and I am Carethian. You may have heard our name on Federation broadcasts framed as insurgents, separatists, extremists. But what I am about to show you is the truth. I was part of a team that infiltrated a black site called Aegis 9. There we discovered Project Ashfall, a satellite weapon engineered not to protect but to eradicate. Ashfall was designed specifically to target Carethian DNA. It would have unleashed a pathogen that causes neurological collapse in days. It would have murdered 10,000 innocents at Chavri Enclave, children, elders, refugees. The Federation calls this security. I call it genocide. Attached to this message is every document, every confession, every name. Those responsible, from scientists to admirals, are listed. Let the galaxy see them for who they are. And let this be a call not for war, but for justice, for unity between species, for a future where fear no longer writes our laws. We are more than what they want us to be. We are still here. The message ended. The data packets fired into the ether. Rhett exhaled. Now we wait. Now we run. Niven corrected, eyeing the scanners. They found the relay signature. We've got movement topside. An hour later, the tunnels shook. Federation assault drones breached the entry shaft to the signal spire. Talik's cell held them back as long as they could blaster fire echoing down the iron halls, but it was only a matter of time. Fall back, Soraya shouted, helping Vesher onto his feet after a blast sent him sprawling. We can't outrun them all, Lane shouted, clutching a wounded arm. Split up, Talik barked. Fragment, the group make them chase noise, not people. You're going to get slaughtered, Soraya warned. Talik smiled grimly. I've been waiting for a good ending. This feels like one. She met his eyes. I'll see you in the quiet, he said. Then he turned and vanished into the darkness with two of his fighters' blasters raised. Soraya, Red, and the others moved through the secondary tunnel exit, Vesher guiding them toward a maintenance ladder, leading back toward the industrial district. The final door opened to a sky painted in smoke and chaos. Sirens wailed. Federation air patrols roared overhead. Rhett checked the data crystal again. It's still transmitting, he said. The net's already picked it up. Soraya turned to him. You think we just changed something? I know we did. They ran together, disappearing into the city's lower tiers as Federation forces scrambled in every direction, too late to stop the truth. The world had seen, and nothing would be the same. For 3 days, the galaxy spun in turmoil. Federation spokespeople denied the footage. Their top scientists issued vague, contradictory statements, fabricated, contextually misleading, an act of foreign sabotage. They said the documents had been altered. The personnel named were either retired or dead, but it didn't matter anymore. The people had seen, from the crystalline cities of the Ashari clans to the SeaWorld colonies of Volarath Prime to human settlements in deep space, the reaction was the same: disbelief, anger, and then a swell of solidarity. Peaceful protests erupted across Terran space. Calls for reform flooded planetary governor offices. Some Federation allies, those who had long questioned its expansionist policies, froze military cooperation. And more damning than anything else, whistleblowers began to speak. A former security analyst from the Aegis Directorate confirmed the existence of other projects like Ashfall. A biogeneticist from the Valis complex leaked internal logs of xenogenic trials. The galaxy began to realize Ashfall was not an exception. It was the first exposed limb of a much deeper rot. In a hideout beneath the ruins of a collapsed cargo tram line in Sector Vermis Soraya, Rhett and their remaining team watched it all unfold. The cramped space buzzed with intermittent comm signals, low-power terminals, and the muted hum of redirected heat coils. Niven leaned over the datapad reading the latest from the Resistance Network. The Ashari just called for a formal inquiry into Federation bioweapons programs, and 5 member worlds of the core union have backed them. Momentum Bashar said, "It's finally happening." But Rhett wasn't smiling. He stood near the wall watching a grainy news feed on a flickering monitor. On screen, a Federation Council member, Senator Halvers, was giving a statement. "We acknowledge the concern raised by the Ashfall incident. As a sovereign entity, the Federation is investigating the unauthorized development of this weapon system. However, we must emphasize that the so-called rebels who leaked this information remain dangerous radicals seeking to destabilize order." Soraya approached him, folding her arms. "They're spinning it." "They always do," he replied. "They're trying to hold the middle ground, pretend they're responding while painting us as the enemy." "Let them try," she said. "We've done more in 3 weeks than the Resistance did in 3 years." "That's what I'm afraid of," Rhett muttered. That night, Soraya found him alone, seated on a crate in the narrow hallway behind the main chamber. "You haven't slept," she said, sitting beside him. He looked at her. "You have." "No," she admitted, "but I'm not the one losing faith." He hesitated. "I'm not losing faith. I'm just wondering what comes next." "You already know," she said. "We make sure this doesn't happen again. We dismantle everything that allowed it to begin with. And when that gets us killed," Soraya reached out, took his hand, "then we make sure our deaths mean something, more than orders, more than protocols, something real." He looked down at their interlaced fingers, then back up at her. "You keep grounding me," he said. "Someone has to." The next day, a message arrived, not through open channels, but a secured line keyed specifically to Rhett's old command credentials. Only one person still had access to that line. Admiral Kalen Vire, the man who had once mentored Rhett, who had supported his defection publicly only to vanish quietly from Federation service 6 months ago. The message was brief. "Meet me. Outpost 117. Come alone. The storm is here." Niven read it twice. "It's a trap." "Maybe," Rhett said. "But if it's real, he's the only one who can get us inside the next layer." The next layer of what Soraya asked. Rhett turned to her. "The council. The real council. Not the figureheads on camera. The ones behind the curtain." Soraya's gaze hardened. "You're saying Ashfall wasn't just some military op? I'm saying it was part of a strategic doctrine, one hidden deep in the Federation's defense infrastructure. Something called the Pillars Directive." Niven's eyes narrowed. "I've heard whispers. Asset classification, Eben layer. Emergency protocols to preserve human dominance." Soraya stepped closer. "You think this directive is still active?" "I think they never stopped believing in it," Rhett said. "And if Vire is reaching out now, it means someone inside the machine is ready to burn it down." Outpost 117 was hidden in the upper cliffs of Solane Ridge, an abandoned weather control facility, long since stripped of its resources. The team arrived under cover of night, approaching on foot to avoid detection. The outer perimeter was dark, the facility silent. Rhett moved first, eyes sharp, hand on his weapon. Inside, a single light flickered in the central control room. And there, sitting in a chair dressed in a tattered officer's coat, was Kalen Vire. Older than Rhett remembered. Thinner, paler, but his eyes were just as sharp. "Callan," he greeted. "You brought the Verdani." "Her name is Soraya," Rhett said evenly. "Of course." Vire stood slowly. "I watched your broadcast," he said. "You turned the tide." "No," Rhett replied. "The truth did. We just delivered it." Vire smiled faintly. Modest, but misplaced. He tapped a control on the terminal. The screen lit up. A map of Federation command structures appeared. Red nodes highlighted active intelligence corridors. "These are the projects that came after Ashfall," Vire said. "Similar objectives, different delivery systems, all buried in black budgets and shell divisions." Soraya stepped forward, her stomach turning. "How many?" 6 confirmed, Vire said. 3 in early deployment stages, 1 targeting the Drenari, another the Athari. "They're not even at war with us," Soraya said, stunned. "They don't need to be," Vire replied. "They're alien. That's enough." Niven cursed under her breath. Why are you helping us? Soraya asked him directly. Veer looked tired. Because I watched my son die on a battlefield we weren't supposed to be on. Because I believed the lies long enough to lose everything that mattered. And because, like Callan, I want to believe that we can still fix what we broke. He pulled out a data crystal. This contains the complete record of the Pillars Directive, authorship, voting history, the chain of command that allowed it to thrive. Rhett took it slowly. With this, Vyre said you can put the final nail in their coffin. They returned to the hideout in Sector Vermis 2 days later. No one slept. No one spoke much. The weight of what they now held was almost too heavy. And then everything accelerated. The Federation declared the resistance leaders fugitives. A bounty was placed on Soraya, Rhett, and Niven, highest ever issued in Federation history. Skirmishes broke out in multiple sectors. But more importantly, votes of no confidence began in several planetary councils. One by one, power began to slip through the Federation's fingers. And Soraya realized something she hadn't dared believe in years: victory was possible. Not guaranteed. Not without cost. But possible. Late that night, she and Rhett stood on a rooftop overlooking the fractured skyline of Spirehold. Below them, lights flickered as people gathered again, peacefully this time around resistance broadcasts. They weren't running anymore. Not really. Vyre's chip goes out tomorrow, Rhett said. After that, there's no going back. There never was, Soraya replied. She looked at him. Do you think they'll come for us? They already are. A moment passed. I'd do it all again, she said. He looked at her. Me too. She stepped forward, kissed him soft, this time quiet. A promise, not an escape. And when they parted, she saw the storm clouds rising in the distance. But for the first time, they didn't look like an ending. They looked like a beginning. The morning of the broadcast, Sector Verma stood on the edge of siege. Drone patrols buzzed overhead in V formation. Federation troop carriers hovered at the city's perimeter, silent threats in the sky. Propaganda bots flooded the networks with last-minute damage control, blaring slogans about unity through strength and containment of sedition. But it was too late. The silence, the centuries of compliant hush had finally broken.